All right, we are live. I just got the notification. So I just have to wait for Instagram to catch up with us, and then I can hit go live over here.
Awesome.
And uh-oh.
Something went wrong?
I have an echo, and I don't know why. Let me just see why I have an echo. Everybody hang tight. I'm looking at some other screens because my voice was echoing. Sarah, do you happen to have it up on another screen?
Nope, I don't. Oh, wait. No, I see myself in a little box at the corner that's not right. Am I only supposed to see me in the big screen? There's a little screen to the side.
Yeah, you are like, we're echoing extra. Like you and I are both. Friends, we're having a few technical difficulties, so hang tight with us. I don't know why it's doing that. Did you shut some? Oh, Sarah. All right, I added you back.
Do you still hear it? Oh, now I hear it.
Let me just, I'm going to close all the other windows that I have open. This has never happened before when I've used StreamYard. Okay, friends, sorry, really sorry. Just hang tight. We're just trying to figure out why there's such a terrible.
Hello?
All right,
Ooh,
I got it.
I have an echo.
Is it better now? I think I fixed it.
I have a bad echo.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You have nothing else open? Because I don't have it here anymore. I'm not hearing it.
I'm going to close all my windows.
Yeah, that's what I did. Friends, thank you for saying hi. I'm so glad you're not hearing the
Do I
echo.
still hear an echo?
It sounds
Yeah, I
like
still
it's
hear an
on
echo.
our end. I figured out because I had Instagram volume still on. So that's why I heard it. But I muted Instagram. Hi, Instagram. Hi, everybody.
I'm going to go out and come in
Yep,
one more
sounds
time.
good. Whew, technology, it's such a beautiful thing. So I use a program called StreamYard when I do this. That allows me to go live to all the platforms, because if there's one thing I heard from you guys, a lot of you are not on Instagram, or maybe you're not on Facebook or Instagram, and I really want to reach as many people as possible. So that's why I do it this way. So thank you for being patient. Sarah is a wealth of knowledge, and I can't wait for her to share it with you guys. One of the things I'm most excited about is she's a teacher. And I know so many of you are teachers, and you've tried to figure out how you navigate the wig world as a teacher. And she has some thoughts on that. So I think that could be really helpful as well. So we're just waiting for her to come back in. Happy Friday. I see happy Fridays. Hi from Arizona, California. I'm always so excited when I see where everybody's from. I'm so glad that you guys didn't hear it. Yeah, you're right, Cheryl. So I figured out what the echo was on my end. I don't know why suddenly Sarah was hearing it, because I fixed that. Hi, everyone on Instagram. Just so you know, if you want a better view of this, you can head over to YouTube. It's just Denise Sheets is my channel, because it'll fill your screen. Instagram requires a different formatting than YouTube and Facebook. So it kind of gets the short end of the stick, unfortunately. Hi from Memphis, Iowa. My son lives in Iowa. I see an Iowa over on Instagram, or on Instagram. My son is in the Des Moines area. He went to college at Drake and never came home. So I've got one in Iowa, one in North Dakota, and my youngest is graduating in a couple weeks, and he's heading off to Nebraska. So I'm going to kind of have them all over the place. Got Nashville, Texas, Indiana. Sarah has not come back yet, so I'm just looking to see if she's messaging me. Maybe she's having some trouble. This is actually the first time I've ever done a live that we had technical difficulties on, so we're doing pretty well. Dublin, Texas, got a couple of Texas. British Columbia, yay, Canada's in the house. Well, so Kathy, we're not actually selling wigs. We're doing education. and wig price points are all over the place. So we're not showing specific wigs on this live, but we're going to teach some things, and hopefully you will learn how to work with wigs. And, you know, not pay too much, understand what it is that you're getting for your money, because there is no real standard when it comes to terminology in the wig world, unfortunately. And people use terms differently. It's really frustrating, I would say. We've got St. Louis, Kansas, lots of Texas. That's awesome. Wisconsin, my neighbor, Ohio. All right, I am not sure where Sarah is. She has not come back yet. She hasn't messaged me either. So what I would love is if you have any specific wig questions. It can be synthetic or human hair. Sarah's going to talk a little bit about human hair because she has some knowledge that I don't even have that she can share. But she also wears synthetic wigs as well. And so I wanted her to talk a little bit about her thoughts on why somebody might choose synthetic versus human hair, kind of vice versa, just as, especially if you're new, as you're thinking about what you should spend your money on. And I know I've shared in a lot of videos my preferences, and I wear them all as well. It can really be helpful to hear from someone else and find out what they think. So I'm just looking to see if I can figure out where Sarah is, because she's not coming back, you guys. I don't know what's happening. I'm so sorry. Let me look and see if anybody has questions. Are most of my wigs synthetic? Yeah, actually, most of my wigs are synthetic. I have both. I would say I choose synthetic usually for ease. You know, if I want to wear shorter hair, I am not great at styling shorter human hair. I find it very difficult to style. And so I'll grab synthetic for that. My preference is heat-friendly synthetic because it doesn't have a shine, and regular synthetic can sometimes be shiny. It used to be, before I discovered some curly human hair. I think Sarah's coming back here. Before I discovered curly
human hair. I am so sorry.
That's okay.
My battery died, and I'm so sorry, you guys.
That's okay.
The plumber's here. It's just like everything that can go wrong is going wrong.
Okay, everybody take a deep breath.
My hair looks great. So there's that.
Your hair does look great. I think we've got it though. So Sarah does have a plumber in her house right now. He was supposed to have been there an hour ago, and he arrived about 5 minutes ago. So that could also interrupt, but I've got plenty to talk about and I can answer questions. So I thank you guys for being here. So we have a lot of people on right now, and we're just chatting, waiting for you. So I'm just going to get right into this. If you're ready, I'm going to have you introduce yourself to everybody, kind of who you are, your story with the wig journey, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So I'm Sarah Schaffler. I am known as Scarlett Glows Up on YouTube and on Instagram and on Facebook and on TikTok. I also have a separate Instagram page, locks.of.confidence on Instagram, and a website, Locks of Confidence. So I think Denise put it all in the description, but I am 52 years old. I always say this, I have not had any work done, no fillers, nothing. It's the hair. Because when I take this off, I look 10 years older. I am very, very passionate about hair. I am a teacher, so I'm a lifelong learner. And my hair has been thinning since my late 20s to early 30s. You know, I went to the dermatologist and they told me, oh, it's normal, but they didn't diagnose me. They didn't give me any solutions. I think we all have very similar stories. I also have androgenic alopecia, which is the most common form of female hair loss, which does not result in full hair loss. So if I had a nickel for everybody that said you don't need to wear a wig, I wouldn't need to work. But I also think that no one needs a reason to wear hair, and the stigma is ridiculous. But I believed all those stigmas before I started wearing hair. Oh, everybody's going to know. Oh, it's going to look so fake. You know, I went to one of those local wig spas that only had super terrible wiggy wigs that they wanted a fortune for. And you don't know anything, and you don't know about the Facebook groups or anything else. So I just thought to myself, this is my future. I'm either going to have horrible hair, I'm going to look like a clown in a wig. Mm-hmm. And then I got into the Facebook groups and I started learning. And it was a process. And I mean, a very long process. I went through hell my first year. It was almost as difficult learning how to wear wigs and learning how to understand wigs than it was to lose my hair. It was absolutely insane. And the money, I mean, I spent $20,000 my first year, and I'm not a wealthy person. I got addicted to finding the perfect wig and having to try all the different ones, and then they don't work and you can't send them back, or restock fees, or you bought final sale, or you bought secondhand and it wasn't what you expected. Just on and on and on and on. And that's where when I realized how much money I kept wasting, I decided, look, I'm not a stupid person. I'm an educator. So I'm going to educate myself on everything there is to know about human hair. And I will tell you this, I'm still learning. The human hair market is very different than synthetics. It is something that's grown on a human head. And there's so many variables. And because it's an unregulated market, it is incredibly overwhelming. Like, why is one luxury wig $10,000 and another luxury wig is $1,500?
Yeah.
What's the difference, right?
Yeah.
Then you have all these false claims made about like single drawn wigs, which don't even exist. They come from one donor. Doesn't exist, because even Beyonce had to make a wig from twins. But people say this stuff, you know? So it's, and I'm not bashing brands in any way. It's just I've literally had to have conversations with people that had wig brands to educate them, because anybody can start a wig brand. And that's the other thing. Like, I could start one tomorrow. I have the knowledge to start one. You couldn't pay me enough to do it. It's too stressful. But I mean, anybody could start a wig brand. And what is their knowledge base on what they're selling? And then you're dealing with Chinese vendors. It is like this whole thing that took me 2 years of in-depth, deep dive, obsessive studying. And that's because that's just the kind of person I am, you know?
Yep.
And I can still have issues regardless of how much I know.
Yep.
You know, I started wigs with a synthetic, like most of us. I wore the same synthetic every day for 2 months, tried to make it look like close to what my hair was before. People just thought I got a great blowout and a color job or whatever, you know? And then, you know, once you're out of the wig closet, you want every length and every color and every style. And then you're sitting there in debt going, what on earth? Like, I have one head. How many wigs does a person need?
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Yeah.
So that's, you know, I also realized that if I cut my hair differently, it conceals my thinning. So people don't necessarily think I have thinning hair, but I absolutely do. I mean, just to look how much older I look. But I got this pixie cut and it conceals, but I have bald temples and a widening part. And also, you know what else conceals it? Going gray. So gray hair is so light, it actually conceals your scalp.
Sure.
And so when I was coloring my hair red and battling the gray for a million years, my hair looked so much thinner when it was long, and, you know, all you saw was this. And then, you know, the gray was growing in. But I get, you know, a lot of people like, you don't have hair loss. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But I do. And I've had it for a long time, and it got thinner and thinner and thinner until I had, you know, I cut it in an A-line bob, and now I wear wigs that are A-lines. And I have a pixie that's an A-line. I like asymmetrical. And then the front, I had gaps in the front because my temples were so bald. Look how long it takes to have perfect hair.
Yeah, I know, it's incredible. So and I would also, you know, I would also say you touched on something. So many of us struggle to hide our thinning hair for a long time before we come to wigs. And so we actually spend a fair amount of money doing that, whether it's buying every time I would see a new thickening shampoo or a shampoo that would help grow my hair back, or a serum, and you buy it all. And the Nioxin brand, and
I tried the laser light band.
And I would color my hair all the time because it would make it thicker for like a week, and I could work with it a little more. And so I do think, you know, wigs are an expense for sure, and a learning curve, but most of us have gone through a lot of struggle up to the wig point. And so it's almost like pick your battle, you know, pick your struggle that you're going to go through. And I also have heard from so many women that feel a little bad about wearing wigs when they don't actually have hair loss, or they have hair loss to them, maybe not to the world, but their hair is different than it used to be, but it's not as bad as somebody else that they maybe have seen. And so then they feel terrible. And so I think, you know, one of my goals, and I know it's one of your goals as well, is to normalize this for just anybody. For anybody. I don't care why you want to wear a wig. It's good for everybody.
It is. You don't need to have hair loss to wear a wig. Like styling your hair is a pain in the butt. Getting it colored and cut is a pain in the butt. You know, I wear my bio hair too. I wear my pixie, but you know, when it goes to like going to work, I don't want to sit here and I have to flat iron it and put a bunch of stuff in it to make it look good. And I don't want to, number one, I don't want to waste the time. Number two, I don't want to damage the little hair I've got left. So why not throw on a wig that takes 30 seconds and my hair looks perfect?
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
And that's where it's like, you can have a full head of hair and still just want perfect hair in 10 seconds and not have to deal with it.
Yeah, you know? For sure. Yeah. So talk a little bit about, you're a teacher, and I cannot tell you the number of women I've talked to who are teachers and are terrified that their students will know that they're wearing a wig. It's a real struggle for a lot of teachers. And so they're looking for that one that they can wear all the time, or a couple they can change out, but they look real similar. How did you get to the point where you were just wearing different hair to with your students? And I'd like to point out, you teach primarily seniors, so they're older. It's not like little kids that are sometimes a little more forgiving or accepting. You know, high school students can be pretty judgmental.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I teach predominantly African-American students, and to them, wigs are completely normal. You know, so I think it would be different if I was teaching a predominantly Caucasian, because there's a double standard. Yeah. You know, African-American women, there's no judgment from anybody that they wear wigs but the way it started is messed up. You know, their natural hair isn't considered beautiful. Yes, it is beautiful, but they were told that Afro hair wasn't beautiful. So wigs is what they should wear. And everybody accepted that, which is really kind of insulting to African-American people, right? Because their Afro hair is beautiful and it should be accepted and loved. And every time I see one of my students with their natural hair, I make sure to tell them it's beautiful, because they've been programmed to think it's not. But with the Caucasians, they're taught that European hair is the gold standard. So if you're born European and have European hair, why would you ever cover it? Well, first of all, you can have crappy, frizzy, ugly European hair that is a nightmare. And that doesn't mean just because you're European, your hair is silky and beautiful. It also doesn't mean your hair won't thin. So, you know, I'm in the position where my students think it's super cool. You know, Teacher Appreciation Week last year, I won Best Hairstyles. They love my hair. They also love my gray pixie, which, by the way, I wear that too. I wear it all. They love the gray. You know, gray's actually on trend. Go figure. After all these years of battling it, right? But I have one wig that's like pink and purple and orange. That's their favorite wig. It's like rainbow hair. Yeah. But I have that kind of personality. You know, I'm also an actress. I'm not a wallflower. This is the tamest color I've ever worn. And I'm wearing this predominant, and you know me, I'm wearing this because it's so natural. And this is my newest wig, and I love her. And I never thought, and that's the other thing, when you finally like open up to wigs, I never thought I'd be wearing a blonde. Yeah. You know, I used to think it washed me out. I'm a redhead and a fashion color girl. But when we get into talking about color processing, the misery of liking fashion colors and reds is a real thing. Yeah. But I wear it all. I wear long, short, different colors every day. But I also have very understanding students. However, they will tell me if they don't like one. Oh, Miss Shoffley, no, I don't think you should wear that one again. And I usually don't, because I'm like, they're the most honest. Okay,
that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. I want to just let you know. So we have a viewer, Jean, Jene. She said, Sarah, I didn't recognize you until you took your wig off. I've been following you for some time. You look great. So there's that. Maybe we can tell people what we're wearing. So I will start. This is TressAllure Stunning in the color 17. The color is not coming across true on this, so don't judge the color, but 17/23/R8. It's part of their new human hair line that they just launched, and they're all fully hand-tied caps. And this wig is just incredible. It's a luxury, it's expensive, but it's way better than I expected, because I just haven't, always been super impressed with the major name brand human hair wigs. I feel as though they're very overpriced for what you get, and you can get better color quality and things in more boutique sellers for less money.
Yeah.
Generally, there's some exceptions for sure, but I would just say in general. So when I was skeptical, but TressAllure did a really amazing job. So what are you wearing? I linked it in the description of the YouTube video, so it's in there right now if you're on YouTube.
I'm wearing Radiant Hair Company, and this is a custom, so it's a custom color. However, I did not buy it directly from Radiant. I bought it secondhand because as beautiful and amazing as this wig is, I would not pay that much. And it's no disrespect to them, but their wigs are this is a $2,500 wig, which here's the thing. This is a $2,500 wig. And the one you're wearing is what, $3K?
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to touch on that for a minute. And by the way, I love TressAllure. I think that they're a phenomenal brand in synthetics. I have to say though, and this is where, and I'm not bashing anybody, but I'm going to say this is where the buying public doesn't know these things, that how big a company is affects how much their wigs cost.
Yeah,
you are paying for their overhead. And this is the same with
and the brand recognition, just like anything. Yes. Jeans, you can get Old Navy jeans, and
exactly.
You can get,
it's with anything. But what buyers don't realize is what happens a lot of times is women start out wearing synthetics. And they don't research, and they think the only human hair wigs are then human hair Raquel Welch or human hair TressAllure. And then they're paying $4K for a wig that honestly is probably not as good as what I'm wearing on my head. I mean, you want to talk about a flawless hairline and flawless invisible lace. Look at this. Yeah. And this hairline and hair is top notch. This is $2,500, and it's probably $2,800 by now, but what I'm saying is it's much longer. Yeah. It has, and I'm not discounting your wig looks great and it's beautiful.
Oh no, and it's fully hand tied. I would say a big difference is this is fully hand tied. There's no wefts on this one.
But I also don't. I personally don't like hand tied wigs. I think they make the wigs poofy. Oh, because and this is again like a personal preference, right? I like very flat wigs on top, because I think to me that looks the most natural. I also don't like bangs. So hand-tied caps, every single hair is sewn in by hand. So there is what we call return hairs on the other side of the whole wig versus just the top. So what that does is it actually gives more volume to the wig, even if it's low density. And I personally don't like that.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's not, I'm going to be doing a reel about that soon, because that's actually something that, everybody thinks hand-tied caps are the best and the gold standard. The other thing about hand-tied caps is they can shed more than wefted caps and faster because every hair is sewn in. So for me personally, I prefer wefted caps as far as for longevity, lack of shedding, and poofiness. But I do love TressAllure's synthetic wigs. I think they're some of the best in the business, and I'm sure that wig is amazing. I think that the synthetic brand human hair wigs are grossly overpriced compared to what I know I can get as someone who is a hair consultant, what I get for myself and for others for literally, half of that for whatever that length. That's like a 16-inch.
Well, and I think that's a kind of an interesting point that we can maybe touch on in a little bit. It's when you don't kind of know what you're doing, sometimes it's low hanging fruit. You start with synthetic, the synthetic brands. I personally like a little volume. One of my struggles with my human hair is how flat they are. And I don't love that. And I don't love that. And so I think maybe that's why I gravitate toward hand tied is for that reason. But let's touch a little bit on what you see the differences are between synthetic and human hair, and why you or someone else would choose one over the other. Not just price. I mean, price is a big factor, but let's just say price wasn't the reason. Why would somebody who can afford human hair choose to maybe wear synthetic?
Well, for me, it's really simple. If you want to wear longer hair, you should go human hair, because the tangling that happens on long synthetics is a nightmare, and they don't last unless you wear them up a lot of the time. That is a fact. And they're still super expensive. I'm not going to name the name or the brand, but there's a synthetic wig right now that is this long that is selling for $1,300. You probably know the wig I'm talking about.
I don't.
$1,300. It is straight heat-friendly synthetic, and it's $1,300. And that's across the board. And then when it goes on sale, it's still $800 or something for a synthetic. Those wigs, when they're long, don't last at all because and then the tangling, I mean, the maintenance you have to do on that tangling is a nightmare. Now, I wear both. And when I wear short, I prefer synthetic because I find shorter human hair is harder to style than longer human hair.
If any of you who were here when Sarah wasn't here, I said that exact thing. I said I cannot style short.
They're really hard to style.
So I go for heat-friendly synthetic every time.
They're really short human hair is really, really hard to style because of return hair and having, it's just impossible. So when I like a short style, and I do wear short styles, I prefer synthetics. But one of the reasons why people like me as a consultant is I am so uber duper duper picky about hair. Like, even though everybody knows I wear wigs, it better not look like one. And that includes synthetics. And there's quite a few synthetic brands that I think are really at the top of their game, like TressAllure. The tiny knots on their hairlines are flawless.
They are so good.
But they need to come out with petite caps.
and they're an expensive brand for synthetics. You know,
yes.
Their prices.
But all the designer brands are expensive, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, and if I will touch on a budget brand that I've been really impressed with in synthetics is Uniwigs.
Okay. Yeah.
Their synthetics are a lot better than the other ones I've seen in that price range. And also what's interesting to note is the cheaper synthetics use what we call Japanese Futura fibers, and the designer brands don't. And I find this fascinating. Japanese Futura fibers oftentimes tangle way less than the fibers that the expensive brands are using, but it's a hit or miss. One longer synthetic won't tangle at all, and another one will.
And I've said that even within the same brand, that'll happen.
Sometimes they will, and sometimes they won't tangle.
Yeah, I've reviewed for Nell's wigs quite a few times, and she uses Japanese Futura.
They all do.
And I've always been so amazed at how her longer wigs just simply, let's be real, they tangle a little bit. My bio hair tangled a lot.
Oh yeah, and the wigs do.
No tangling is not realistic, but just so much less. So I find that really interesting. You know, I mean, we don't always know what fibers these companies are using and their manufacturers are using. So that's hard.
Yeah. I mean, when you have a human hair wig, the tangle is as easy as this.
Yes. Yes.
When you wear a synthetic, it is a matted nightmare. And then you are, you know, I won't even wear a long synthetic. I've worn long synthetics to do a wig review, and they were tangled and matted for 30 minutes. I mean, 20 minutes, you know, and some of the most popular wig brands, I don't think are the best. And I'm not going to name names, but I really also really like, and I've recently tried Henry Margout. Their hairlines are phenomenal. And I love Beltress, but I actually think their City collection has a way better hairline than their expensive
collection.
Oh
no, the Luxe collection. Yeah.
The hairlines aren't as good as the City collection. It's so weird to me.
Yeah.
And the caps are just way too big.
Yeah. We had a question about define short. So when we were talking about short, anything
above.
Yeah. I would say anything from here up is really hard with human hair. And I didn't make the connection that it was the return hairs were part of the issue, because I just assumed I'm not skilled at styling and I don't have as much like room to do the curl or do something, but the return hairs make a little bit of sense to me.
Even a 16-inch human hair is harder to style.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that. But anything like this and above, I think is too hard to style.
I had an asymmetrical A-line human hair, and I would say it's about 12 inches in the front, but the back was really short, and it was so hard to style.
Yeah.
But with synthetics, when I say short, what I mean is anything that doesn't touch your clothes.
Yeah.
And the reason is because anything that touches your clothes, like my Simmer Elite, I've worn it 10 times. It's a rat's nest. I've worn it 10 times, and it's the fiber is a mess underneath. And that only goes just barely touching. So it just, I think if I'm going to talk best fibers in the business, Belle Tress has my favorite fibers. And almost everyone I know says that. Their fibers are phenomenal. They're better than a lot of the other fibers. They really are. Yeah. But then the Japanese Futura fibers are also sometimes really good. Yeah. But then you're dealing with the hairlines are not.
Yeah, you're making a trade-off. So for those of you who aren't familiar, you know, we were talking about Japanese Futura fiber. That's a heat-friendly synthetic fiber that you find a lot on budget wigs like Nell's wigs. And if you've watched my videos, you've seen me review for Nell's wigs. I love Nelly. I love that she carries affordable wigs, but you're making the trade-off most of the time in the cap and in the lace, and not having a realistic hairline, having really visible knots.
Yeah.
The cap isn't always the greatest. And so it's what, you know, that's where the education is so important, because as a new wig wearer, you have no idea that there's such variation and so many
and you can get two of exactly the same wig, and they will have a different curl pattern. The cap will fit different. I'm talking, okay, I'm going to buy two simmers.
Yep.
And the curl pattern will be different on one from the other, and one cap will fit bigger than the other. I mean, it's crazy. I will get a synthetic that the cap is super short front to nape because it just wasn't made right. They're you know, they're made with machines, and there's a ton of variation, but there's way less variation in synthetics than there is in human hair.
Yeah, for sure. So Riley had asked, what is the definition of short, medium, and long in inches? And I mean, everybody's different in what they call. I'll do a search on one of the, you know, synthetic retailers, and I'll look up their short. They'll have like categories, and I'm finding wigs that are like to my shoulders. I don't consider that short personally. No. So there isn't really, I don't know if there's a definition of it.
I think anywhere from a pixie, which is as short as you can go, to something that's not hitting the clothes, in my opinion, is short. Okay. If they're not going to hit past my neck. Mid-length is going to be anywhere from, you know, I would say 15 inches down to like 18 inches.
Okay.
And that's measured from the crown. That's how we measure human hair. And then long is going to be your 20 to 30 inches.
Yeah. Not everybody measures human hair from the crown.
No.
May Wigs measures
from the nape. I know.
Except for on her bob. Those are measured from the crown. So that's the other challenge I would say for wig wearers is, where are they measuring these links from?
Well, you know, this is how and we haven't gotten into this yet, but if a wig is single drawn, it's measured from the nape.
Okay.
There's only one company I know that measures not quite from the nape, but kind of off from the crown, that is not single drawn, and that's Lose. I don't know how they measure, but their wigs are longer, but not necessarily from the nape. It's weird. Okay. But measuring from the nape is when you order 16 inches and it's this long is what I have on now. Yep. Whereas measuring from the crown, 16 inches is here.
Yep.
And that's because, generally speaking, do you want to talk about single drawn, double drawn?
Sure, let's do that.
So this is something that most people don't know and don't understand, because it's very, very complicated, but it's important. If you get a human hair wig that seems very dense on top, but the ends are thinner, you feel like, man, I feel like there's a lot of hair up here, but then the ends are thinner. That is what's called a single drawn wig, meaning the hair has not been sorted at all, which is how it's cheaper. Nobody has sorted the hair. So you get a lot of small or short pieces on top, and I'm talking short, 5 inches, short pieces on top. And then the longest pieces go all the way down, but there's a lot of short pieces on top. So then when you want to go thin it out because you feel like the top's too thick and poofy, you can't thin it out, because if you do, the ends will look ridiculous. They'll be non-existent. This is something I actually learned by purchasing a Maze wig. And it's nothing against her. She didn't say, she, you know, I didn't even know there was a difference until I was like, why is this so dense? And why are the ends thinner? And then I went to my Jewish Orthodox. I'm telling you, ladies, if you have the Jewish Orthodox community in your area, go see them. They know everything there is to know about wigs. She explained to me better than anybody else, single drawn and double drawn. And there's a reel on my Instagram about it that you can go to Wig Tips and find it. And she blew it out and showed all those short pieces that were right here. And it's not return hair. It's a lack of sorting the hair. Now, here's where it gets really complicated. A fully double drawn wig means that they've sorted the hair where if you have a 20-inch wig, every single hair in the wig is 20 inches, except the return hairs. Now, what that does is it gives you a really thick, almost like too thick. The hair's too thick. So what's the solution? Well, I learned this from Jason Archer, our friend, who is literally a wig genius and a very good friend of mine and a very wonderful human being and a very transparent human being. And he explained it like this. If you have a 20-inch wig, you want the wig to be 50% double drawn, which means the hair is sorted so that none of the hair in the wig is less than 10 inches, which is your 50. So they sort the hair, and some of them are 10 inches, some are 12 inches, some are 14 inches, some are 16 inches, some are all the way down to 20 inches. And what that gives you is it gets rid of the poofy top and the extra hair, but it gives you ends that are not too thin. And it mimics real hair because everybody has hair breakage.
Yeah.
Nobody has all the hair the same length. But if you don't sort the hair, you're stuck with so many, and they're really hard to style because they're so poofy on top. And you said you don't mind poofy. And again, this is a preference. Some people might like single drawn wigs. They're cheaper and they like big poofy hair.
Especially if you wear shorter lengths. I would say single drawn, you notice it more when the hair is really long. But if you're kind of wearing a 16-inch, 17-inch, you're not necessarily going to notice it as much, potentially, depending on how many short hairs there are.
Exactly. So it's complicated. So then women are like, well, how do I know? So,
and a lot of these retailers don't know.
Oh, they do. They do. May Wigs knows hers are single drawn. Let me tell you this, I'm going to keep it real. If a brand cannot tell you if their wigs are single or double drawn, you shouldn't buy from them because they should know that. Okay. So they should know that. Now, and if they don't want to answer your question, you shouldn't buy from them either. I'm keeping it 100%. I am the most transparent person. Like I lose jobs in the wig industry. How transparent I am. That's a fact. They need to know that. Now, here's other ways you can know that. Price, how they measure the hair. If they're measuring from the nape and the wig is, 16 inches equaling a wig this long, like I'm wearing now from the nape, and it's custom colored and it only costs $1,200, it's single drawn. And here's the other way you know. They will tell you 150 is natural density. 150 density on a 50% double drawn wig is too much hair. I have some wigs that are only 110 density and they look amazing. And they don't, 150 is a ton of hair. So the reason 150 is a natural density is because there's all those short hairs and it doesn't, again, some people like poofy hair. I can't stand it. So, I ended up selling my May wig at a huge loss because I couldn't do it. And it was but I learned from it.
Right.
So at the end of the day, I'm like, well, I learned from it. It cost me, $700 to learn it. But this is what I'm talking about. Like, this is why hiring someone like me saves you money. Yes, I have a fee. It's not a huge fee, and it saves you money.
Yeah.
So and some people really want that one-on-one attention that, people just don't have time to get. I can put all the educational content in the world out there, which I do. But at the end of the day, some people need more, and that does cost a little bit. But in the long run, it saves you money because human hair is so complicated. Yeah. So if a wig is measured from the crown, and they should say it's measured from the crown, and they say 110 is light density and 130 is light to medium density, and the price for a 24 inch, because it would be measured from the crown, for a 24 inch wig is at least at this market right now, it's for 50% double drawn, you're looking at probably new, at least 1,800. And that's from somebody who's a low cost retailer. Yeah. Then you probably know based on how it's measured, the cost of the wig, and you can ask the seller. And if they can't tell you that, don't buy from them. They should know that.
Yeah. Yeah. And toward the end, we'll talk about questions people maybe should ask before they purchase, because we're going to cover a few other things before we get there. Yeah. But so, and again, I think I just want to stress, there is a lot of preference in
I'm
here.
so sorry, plumber. I'll be right
That's
back.
okay. There's a lot of preference in here because I have a May Wigs wig and I love my wig. But I like a little fullness around the head. And part of the reason why that is because I wore synthetics for years. And so coming from synthetics to human hair, they felt really flat to me. And so I do like a little bit of volume. And so some people can't wear synthetics because they always feel too full. That's going to happen to you in the beginning regardless, because if you come to wigs due to hair loss, you are used to not having very much hair. So synthetics all wigs will have a transition period where you need to kind of get used to seeing yourself with more hair. But if you give yourself that time and you just cannot find a synthetic that feels and looks natural, then human hair might be the right fit for you, because in general, they're often a lot flatter. But if you love permatease and you love the fullness on synthetics, but you struggle with knowing that it's not human hair, or the tangling, or the short life, or you want to be able to style, then you might want to look for a wig like we've talked about that has a little bit of volume, because you're going to miss that coming from synthetics.
Well, some synthetics are low density too. And I always want low density for me, my personal preference, you know.
And I would say, a great brand for that would be Beltress. They don't tend to use permatease. They generally have low density. And, I think they've got a couple. I think I've had one Beltress that had permatease, but that was years ago. Their City collection is head and shoulders above the Cafe collection and is really great, really realistic.
It is.
Ellen Villa could be a good brand for low density, but the caps run a little small. So there are some good brands for that. Let's talk about color. So one of the things that you talk a lot about is the processing that wigs go through. I have always tried to communicate that brunettes have it a little bit easier, because generally the darker the hair, the less processing it's gone through generally. And the lighter the hair, the more, because, whatever 85% of the wigs in the market start as black or super dark brown. And so just think about, if you have black hair and you dye it to blonde, what are you doing to your hair? So and then you throw on top of it fashion colors, reds, which fade. I remember in my 20s, I had a friend, she went to Aveda to become a stylist, and she would color my hair auburn, and I hated how quickly the auburn went away. Just kind of fell out of my hair. So talk a little bit about the processing and the color, and things that maybe people aren't aware of when they're buying wigs.
Yeah, I have again, I have education on my YouTube channel, which Denise put in. Please subscribe, by the way, anyone watching. That if you go to my channel under wig education, there's a whole video on color processing. But here's the thing. The best hairlines are gotten from a bleach blonde base. I'm going to explain this. So there are some very expensive high-end brands that even with brunettes paint the color from a bleach blonde, because a bleach blonde base is like a canvas for an artist. So this hairline here, I can tell you, and my lighting's not that great. It's getting dark, but you can I can tell that this is painted from a bleach blonde base. And one of the biggest reasons I know is because usually your hairline won't be perfect like this. Usually the hairline knots with luxury a lot of times will be bleached, but not the part line. And if you paint from a bleach blonde base, and May does this too at May Wigs, then you have, if the wig artist knows the techniques to avoid the knots, what they do is they color all the way down the shaft of the hair, but avoid the knots. And this gives you an uber realistic hairline. Here's the downside. When you are painting from bleach blonde, not only is the hair highly processed, that even brunettes, blondes, and everything else will fade far faster than a textile dye, and I'll talk about that in a minute, or a virgin unprocessed piece, period. So there are companies out there charging a ton of money, and they're painting from bleach blonde bases, And they're never telling people, hey, after 4 or 5 washes, you're going to need to refresh this. If you're a redhead or fashion color, try 1 to 2 washes. This is legit. So let's say you buy a wig that you wear every day because you can't afford to have 50 of them. You buy a wig you wear every day, human hair, gorgeous hairline, gorgeous paint. You have to wash it once a month because you only have to wash your hair once a month if you wear it daily. And after you wash it, let's say it's this color. After you wash this wig 4 to 5 times, it's going to need color refresh. And color refresh costs you another $300 to $500. These are things that are not being told. Now, the other thing is that, and I'm talking 90% of the wig artists paint with demi-dye. And these are things, again, the public doesn't understand. Well, what's demi-dye? Demi-dye is a glaze. It is not a permanent dye. So what happens is they're using 100% demi-dye and the wigs fade even faster. And, none of this is being explained to the public. So if they use permanent dye, it's still going to fade a lot faster than what is called textile dye. So textile dye is what the factories in China, where 99.9% of the wigs are gotten.
And I want to stress that because I think a lot of people don't realize China has the complete corner on this market.
Monopoly.
The United States does not have the skill set to make wigs. There may be a few exceptions. Jason Archer makes his own lace fronts. He has his factories build the rest of the wig. There are some exceptions, but the vast majority, some piece of a wig, if not the entire wig, comes through China. And I know people who source their own hair from other places, but they have to send them through China because China has the skill set to do it.
Yeah.
And that is something I think is important to understand, why there can be such a communication challenge, why there can be such a discrepancy in quality or, what we're getting, why it's not so easy to become a retailer or to buy your own wigs from a Chinese retail. I see in the Facebook groups, I'm just going to go straight to the vendor and get my wig and then I'll get it colored and cut and everything when it gets here, but you may not get the quality that you think you're going to get. So I just think that's important to know. Not always. I mean, there's so many exceptions.
The other thing is, but the other thing is the Chinese vendors will tell you anything to sell wigs, and they do that to the brands, not just us. Yeah. They will say, "Oh, highest quality European hair," and no problem. I mean, they're lying. I mean, they'll tell it's single donor.
Yeah,
you can't.
There's a different value system. There's a different business practices. We're not the same in how we do things, and it's different culturally. Like there's just a lot of differences, and if you don't understand that, then you make some potentially incorrect assumptions.
Yes.
I would say.
And there's also a huge communication barrier because most of the people selling wigs from China are using a translator. They don't speak English. Yeah. So there's just a massive communication barrier. I have researched the Chinese vendors, and I know some of the top brands that are used by top vendors that are used by brands in the US. And I sometimes order from them for my clients, but I try, like I've ordered from them myself first and things like that. And it is difficult to order from China, and it's very difficult. And the thing is when you order from China, like if I do it for a client, I tell them, look, this isn't refundable. They don't let you return them unless there's a problem with the actual, the quality, and you can prove it. And so, but then, you get into, when we're talking about coloring, unless a wig is costing, $8,000 to $10,000 for a blonde, it's not virgin. And so many companies say they're in US brands, Canadian brands say the hair's virgin. And I'm like, where did we get the idea that virgin hair meant? And I've asked some brands, well, that means that I got the hair virgin and then I processed it. It's still processed. It's not virgin. Yeah. Like virgin hair is unprocessed hair. So you really have to be careful when you see terms like virgin, or when you see things like European hair. if they don't have the word texture after European, 9 times out of 10, they're falsely advertising, because you have to put the word texture, because 99.9% of these wigs are Indian and Chinese. And unless a vendor or a brand sees them cut the ponytail off a European, they have no clue where that hair came from.
Well, and I struggle with all of that as it is, because I am European descent, Eastern and Western, and so is my sister. We have the same parents, and she has thick, curly. This is why I love curly wigs, because I grew up with siblings that had like curly, not wavy, curly hair. And I had stick straight, baby fine, thinning since I was in my late teens hair. And I mean, we came from the same origin. So I struggle even with that description, because not all European hair is the same.
Right. No, and I've said that too. I'm like, good hair is good hair. I did a reel on this. I was like, the origin is not what's important. The quality and the texture is what's important. And, you know, just like here in the States, there are Chinese people that have finer, thinner hair, thicker, heavier hair, frizzy hair, you know, all of the above. And same with Indian hair. We, you know, sometimes I think to myself, where is all this hair coming from?
Yeah.
How are there this many people that are selling their hair? Because, like, first of all, you want to talk about what the States can't do? The States cannot get that much hair. Like, no Americans are sitting around cutting off 30 inches of hair. So it is also a cultural thing, I believe, to sell your hair. And then, you know, I'm going to keep it real. I believe, and I've heard about this, that some hair is unethically sourced, where women are forced to cut their hair because it's so profitable to get good hair, where they're forced and it's just taken from them. But there's really no way to know, you know, they're also taking it from children. Like, you know, there's a lot of, I mean, and sometimes when you think about, like, I'm wearing someone else's hair on my head, like, it's a little bit creepy. Like, but I mean, we have to understand that you don't know, we don't have the control to know where hair is coming from. And that's why the most honest vendors will always say texture after whatever, because you can have a European texture, a Mongolian texture, but to say it's actually European or Mongolian is absurd in this market, because you don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah. I think that's why some women would love to wear human hair, but they can't bring themselves to do it, because they don't want to contribute to the potential abuse of people.
There's a lot of abuse out there in the Asian countries around hair because of how much, and even more so after COVID. I mean, wigs are it's a good thing wigs are becoming normalized, but I sometimes think to myself, aren't we going to run out of hair at some point? Like, where this is grown on a human head, like, it's not, it's a commodity that can't be made by a machine.
Yeah. Off the top of your head, are you able to describe the texture differences in general? Because again, European could mean a lot of things, a lot of different textures, but when we're referring to European texture, Indian texture, Chinese texture, Mongolian texture, Brazilian texture, doesn't come off a Brazilian person, what is that telling us as far as what can someone expect the texture to be like?
Yeah, I talked about that in one of my educational videos.
This ties into a question or a comment someone made. She bought a brand name virgin European hair and it would not hold a curl, and she always wonders why. And I know that some texture don't curl well and some are generally frizzy. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, so there is also some techniques to curling the hair that can help you have it last longer. And one of those techniques is to use it takes forever, I'm not going to lie. It takes a long time, but if you curl smaller sections of the hair, it can help keep the curl. And then don't ever take the curls out until they're completely cool. And before you take the curls, like, you know, take them out of there, put some hairspray. Those are some techniques that can help with the curl. So when we're talking about texture, Mongolian texture has a very heavy follicle. It feels heavy. This feels heavy. This is heavy hair, and it feels like Mongolian. It feels like Chinese hair, actually. Like the typical, and again, there's many variations, typical Chinese hair is very heavy and thick, and the follicle itself is very thick. And the hair is kind of heavy, and it does not keep the best curl. Like this one was curled about a week ago, 2 weeks ago by my gal Essie Wigs, and it still has wave, but it was much curlier. And I've only worn it twice, and the curl's already much looser.
Yep.
Now, Brazilian is supposed to hold curl the best texture. Brazilian texture is a little bit thinner and a little less heavy. But the thinnest, lightest texture is European texture. And European texture, it can hold a curl, but not, you know, it probably holds a curl better than Mongolian texture, but the best curl is going to be Brazilian texture. And these are just the different textures. If you think about Mongolian being the heaviest, least curl, lightest is European, holds a curl best is Brazilian. So those are, you know, and then a lot of the hair, like it's so funny to me how one of these huge retailers, I'm not going to name names, they're human hair wigs. They cost so much money, and they describe it as luxurious Indian and Chinese blend. And I'm like, I mean, okay, but you know, Indian hair is actually considered less quality wise than Chinese hair. Indian hair can be very poofy. It's very light, but poofs. Even if it's not single drawn, it tends to poof. And a lot of women don't like the poof.
Sure.
So I kind of have, you know, I've talked to so many women and been around this for so long that, you know, I kind of know what the trends are with not everybody, but a good portion. Women want low density, flat to the head, you know, dimension, lots of dimension, rooted and highlighted. And, you know, these are what's on trend right now. And middle parts, which took me forever to get to the middle part.
I don't think I can do a middle part.
Yeah. But it's, you know, that's another thing. It's so much easier to go middle part with wigs, because if you're a side part, you know, like the wefts, you can only get it kind of over, not too far over. And then sometimes it face flops.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still have 50% of mine on the side, but it's a challenge. But we, you know, we didn't finish color, and I want to get back to color. We got kind of, So 99.9% of these wigs, the lightest color you can get is like it's called a level 6. This is unprocessed. And it's like it's a dark brown, but it's not the darkest brown. So it's like a dark brown, but much lighter than a black.
Okay.
And the level, you know, the darkest ones are black. So none of them are light. So what happens is these factories bleach these wigs, not once, not twice, many, many times over to get a light color. And I know this because when I got a virgin unprocessed hair piece from a luxury brand, or not a brand, a vendor, and I had Jason bleach the knots. And he's like, I had to bleach them 4 times, just the knots, to get them to not be visible. So that's just the knots themselves. So when you think about the knots, also when you bleach knots, that affects longevity. Now a good wig, this wig has very fully bleached knots. It doesn't shed, but it's going to shed faster than a wig that never has had bleached knots.
Right.
But highly processed hair, you know, first it's bleached and then they put textile dye on it. Textile dye is factory dye. It is fabric dye.
Yep.
Now, there are so many pros to textile dye. Textile dye will not fade for a very long time. And that is the biggest pro. And I don't think it's any more damaging than putting hair dye. It doesn't fade for a long time.
And that's something people don't realize, that human hair wigs are going to oxidize. They're going to, the color is going to fade. The color is going to change. And that will happen quicker or slower. Right. But with regular dye, that'll happen quicker or slower, depending on the water quality that you have, the products that you use, how often you have it exposed to UV light and sunlight, and like a lot of factors. But that is a really big difference from synthetic, is that the synthetic's going to hold the color and human hair may not.
Yeah. And the thing is, I have yet to find a synthetic wig that gives me the perfect red without dark knots.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's the problem. So when you get these, so when you have factory color, and you're very familiar with this, Denise, one of the biggest cons, so that's the pro, the color doesn't fade. One of the biggest cons is the roots oftentimes look really blotchy, because what they do is they take the wigs, in machines and just dip them into the root color. And so this they don't look like this. It looks like this big chunk and then this big chunk, and there's no blending, and it looks bad. So I never get rooted pieces from overseas. I never get rooted textile pieces because the roots just look terrible. I'll get a 613 and get it colored, and I know it's going to fade, but at least the color is going to be beautiful, and it's going to need more maintenance. Or one of the things that you can get is, if you get you can get highlights in it, but have the root added by a wig artist, because the roots look terrible. The other huge problem with textile dye is the knots themselves. So if you think about a wig has already been bleached a bazillion times, including the knots, and then you're going to go back in and bleach the knots. So for example, with vibrant reds, which is my heart and my love, I am known as the queen of reds. You know this. I love vibrant reds. The problem is a vibrant red fades so fast, even if it's hand painted permanent dye. It's a nightmare. But a textile dyed permanent red has already been bleached a million times, and then it has this red, and so it's got these dark red knots, and that's textile dyed reds. The knots just won't, 9 times out of 10, they won't lift. You can't do anything to get the knots to go away. And so redheads are left with, now what, and this is with any textile dyed. The knots can be an issue. Sometimes they'll lift and sometimes they won't. And that just depends on the wig. It's just, I had an eye wig. They replaced the front of the lace because there was a problem with the lace. The first time the knots lifted. When the lace was replaced, the knots wouldn't lift. I don't know why, it's just, this is where there's so many unknown variables, and there's literally, there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee when you buy wigs that they're going to be everything you need or want them to be. So
especially if you're trying to go the budget route or you're trying to save money, it's not a guarantee that you won't have this problem if you spend more money, but it's really tricky if you're going the budget route. And one of the questions, 2 people were curious, can a human hair wig that is faded be dyed again? So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think, so let me give an example. I had a wig that I reviewed from Emma Hairpiece. They are a budget Chinese retailer. And I've reviewed a number of their wigs. And for the price, in general, they're not terrible. Of course, there's variation, but I've had some that are great. And if you're looking for something to save money, it could be a great option. And I'd gotten a piece that the color was wrong for me. It was really light brown, kind of a mousy brown. And so I had sent it out to have it be rooted and have low lights added to it. And the first thing was that it cost me $450 to do that, which I did not expect it to be that expensive.
It's expensive if
to
you're
have
getting
a wig
a good
colored.
artist.
It is. And it's really faded, really bad. It doesn't look like at all like it did back then. It barely looks like I had it rooted and low lighted. And now it's been a couple of years. But
how many times have you washed it? Do you know?
Hardly. Yeah.
Well, anyway, I can guarantee it was done in demi dye, and that's one of the problems with demi dye. And Shades EQ is the worst demi dye in the market, and that's all the wig artists' favorite. I'm like, it's the worst. It used to be put on my hair. I'd get the roots done in permanent, and the ends would be demi dyed to blend with the roots. And I mean, it was nightmare. So yeah, the thing about the color is that you have to make sure that you know how much it's expensive to get the color. That's one thing that you touched on. But here's what you have to understand, why it's so expensive. It is not the same thing as coloring a human head. When you color human heads, I'm talking a head with a scalp. The dye, you don't have to worry about anything on the scalp. It'll come out of your scalp. these women that hand paint wigs, they use mascara spoolies to hand paint the root. I tried it once. I was like, never again. To hand paint to get all the shaft all the way down without hitting the knots. It takes so much time to do that. It is a laborious process. It takes forever. And that's why it costs so much. But there is a dye out there that it's called Illumin by Goldwell. It's ELUMEN, I believe. This is a hand painted textile dye. And it is amazing for reds and fashion colors because it won't fade. It'll fade the same as textile dye. But it is so hard to use, and you have to be a mad scientist every time you want to try to combine to get the right color. So my Chandra, my favorite colorist, was using it, and then she couldn't replicate colors and she couldn't get them to work right. And they never came out the way that the client wanted. And she said, I can't keep using it because unless it's a stock piece, because there's just no, and so, so nobody wants to use it. But Jason is using it. Jason is trying to come up with a combination of Illumin and other kinds of textile dyes, and I'm like, sign me up, because I do have Chandra do mine in Illumin because I let her kind of have some leeway with the color. But it's really challenging with human hair and color. You were asking me about, can a wig be recolored? A wig can always be recolored darker. Yes, this is so important when your wigs are textile dyed. And you don't always know if they're textile dyed. If you ask a colorist to lighten and go lighter, there's a 50% chance that wig will shed. And I've asked colorists to do it and they didn't tell me, and they just did it. And I had one of my wigs shed.
Yeah.
And this is where the lack of education, it's scary. It's like, I feel so bad for women, but at the same time, women have to spend time educating themselves if you're going to spend that kind of money, because otherwise you're going to be screwed. If you ask a colorist to lighten something, they're going to do what you want. And then it could, because the wig has already been through so much, it can't, the rule of thumb to me is never go lighter.
Yes.
If it's a virgin piece and it's virgin, having them add some highlights or something is fine. But now a color refresh is generally going to tone the light pieces, which is fine, to add toner to the light pieces and then recolor the rooting and the low lights. That's all fine. It's just don't have them lighten anything.
Yeah. And I would say a really good wig colorist will generally turn down that work. If you reach out to somebody who specializes in wigs and you're asking them to lighten your piece, a lot of the time they won't do it because they don't know where that wig came from. They don't know what was done to that wig before, and it's their reputation on the line. And I've heard this from a lot of people. I can't find somebody to color my wig. Well, you're probably asking them to do something that's too risky for them to take on. And you can't always trust that the hair is virgin. I think that's what makes it so hard. It makes it so challenging because you don't know for sure what's true. And I hate to make assumptions that people are being dishonest. And in some cases, maybe they don't understand, or, the person you're talking to isn't the one that did all the stuff to the wig. And so they're making some assumptions and they're putting trust in someone, and then you're putting your trust in them. But in general, I always tell women, if you are super picky about color and you are unsure if a color will work for you, go lighter than you think you can wear, because you will generally be able to darken it, but you won't be able to lighten it overall. And I also don't recommend just picking a random salon in your area and asking them to color your wig. They do not understand. And I cannot tell you how many women who were stylists for years and years and then came into wigs later, and they're like, oh my goodness, I would have assumed I could do all this stuff because I knew how to do hair. But wigs are different, 100% different. And when you think about it, a wig has got multiple people's hair on it, and all of our hair is different. All of our diets are different. All of our health is different. And all of that impacts how your hair is going to take and hold color.
Yep.
So, what is Remy hair? So Remy hair is, all that means is that all the cuticles are aligned in the same direction. So when hair grows out of your head, all of the cuticles are going in the same direction, and cuticles are like shingles. They're kind of rough, and they lay on top of each other like shingles lay on a roof. And if the hair isn't Remy, then
It'll
you've got
tangle
some of the shingles
really
going
bad.
this way and some of the shingles going a different way. And then that can create tangling and nesting and ratting. And sometimes really cheap wigs can be non-Remy, and then they coat it with a silicone that will mimic kind of Remy hair and try to eliminate some of the tangling, but that will wear off over time. And you've heard Sarah say Jason's name a number of times, and I know a lot of you follow me for a while know who Jason Archer is. I've done a couple of lives with him. He wrote a book called Wig Life that is amazing. It's basically a textbook for wig wearers. It teaches you how to add silicone coating to a wig. It teaches you a lot of things. And so I highly recommend that book. You could search Jason Archer Wig Life on Google and hopefully you'll find it. But so basically that's another thing that you don't always know if you're getting Remy hair just because the company says it is.
Yeah. I would say most brands are Remy. But I mean, if the wig is human hair for $200 or, long human hair for $100, may not be. But speaking of silicone coating, all the wigs are silicone coated,
right?
All of them. And that includes the luxury ones. And the issue with silicone coating is it's more of an issue with budget brands. So, and I'm talking, they're still charging you $800 for a wig. I won't name names, but there's a very, very popular budget brand out there that has every influencer talking about them. And I actually stopped working for them because of the quality issues. When I tell you that I had 2 of their wigs and had them custom colored, and after getting them custom colored, they would tangle and poof out and all this other stuff. I didn't feel comfortable representing them to the public. And this is where I could have still kept getting wigs and made commission with them and sold their wigs for money. I'm not here, like, I am not an influencer. I'm an educator. And I'm not just going to show you wigs just to show you wigs and make money. I have a full-time job. Now, I do have a side business where I can give you one-on-one support that will, help you. But that doesn't mean that I'm ever going to promote something that I don't think people are getting their value for. The color discrepancies and the quality of this hair was so silky, soft, and amazing out of the box that you were like, how is this only $800? And then after you wash it a couple times, first of all, it dries frizzy, which is fine, but that's not all there is to it. It's heavily silicone coated. So once that silicone coating comes off, the hair is completely different. And women are always asking, how do I get my hair to feel like it did when I first bought it? Well, I did, and I put it on YouTube. I did Jason's silicone coating, and it helped, but it did not bring it back to its original state. I will say that. It helped. Definitely didn't make it like it was out of the box, though. And I don't think anything will.
Yeah.
So, high quality hair is still, even high quality hair is eventually going to feel different because this isn't something any of the brands have control over.
Right.
This is what they do in the factories. They silicone coat it, all of them. And we don't know if they're silicone coated or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know they're silicone coated because I've tried it on luxury brands too. I've had this.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes. So we're going to have to sort of wrap up. We could go forever. There's so many things we could talk about.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that I've gotten the question. So we got a question. Can you dye a light colored synthetic?
It's hard.
It's very hard. So I've heard of some people using RIT synthetic dye. So RIT makes a couple of different kinds of dye. There's like a RIT synthetic. I've heard of some people having some success with that. I have tended to just use markers, to be honest with you, and put some low lights and rooting. I have a video showing how to darken a light wig with markers. Markers. I love furniture markers, the furniture touch up, only because you can get a multi-pack and they generally are like shades of brown that work really well. People just say alcohol markers work, Copic markers work. It's just that those are pretty expensive and you can get a lot more bang for your buck with furniture markers, but that's just been my experience. But unfortunately you can't really dye synthetic.
It's very hard.
Yeah. Let me just make sure that I saw one question. Will the tariff raise the cost of our wigs?
Yes.
Probably.
Yeah, it will.
I had a conversation with Kirsten from In Vogue, Concepts by Kirsten. She's working on some things that will try to minimize the impact on her business. But yeah, it's just, unfortunately, it is what it is. And I think that goes back to what I said earlier. We do not have the skill set. No political talk here. I really think we have done a disservice to our country by offshoring so many things. I really think that hasn't been good for us. But it isn't as simple as just trying to get it all back just like that, or charging a lot of money for it, because we don't have the infrastructure. We don't even have the ability to bring the wig business into the country at this point. This is going to be like a year's process. And so unfortunately, I think we're going to have to get creative, maybe buy before the prices go up, and just, you know,
well, they're already going up. But I also think, just real quick on that, I think that it's also an excuse for some less than reputable brands to say they're raising because of tariffs. And then also for the Chinese vendors to say they're, because the Chinese vendors generally ship wigs here saying they're $15 synthetic wigs. Most people don't know that. And if you're sending a $15 synthetic wig and really it's $1,000 human hair wig, but they're not saying that's what it is, that's what they've always been doing. Yeah. And so how much would a tariff really be on that?
Right.
You know? So, and because I get wigs from China and that's what they say they are.
Yeah. So I wanted you to quick answer a question before we wrap up. What are some of the top questions that people can ask if they're looking to buy a wig and they want to understand what they might be getting? So we've talked about double drawn. We've talked about, you know, demi dye.
How is the wig colored?
Yep. So
and
what are some of those major questions?
Yeah, I know a really big reputable company where when I was new, I asked them how it's colored and they just wouldn't tell me. If a wig brand is not going to tell you how a wig is colored or can't tell you if it's single, double drawn, you shouldn't buy from them. This is a lot of money you guys are paying. I would also ask them, those are two really big ones, is how is the wig colored? And I would use verbiage with them. Is it colored from a blonde base? Is it lightened from a virgin brunette? If you're a brunette, there's brunettes out there that are getting hand painted or textile dyed, which makes no sense. You should always go light from a darker color. You should leave it dark, but they're not always dark. A lot of them are still hand painted. So, and then you need to ask them if it's single or double drawn. And then you need to ask to see the wig in multiple different lighting. If you're buying a wig online, it is very difficult to see color. So you need to say, can I see the wig in outdoor lighting? Can I see it in fluorescent light bulb with no light? Can I see it in indoor natural light? Like, you need to get, and then you have to decide, if I like the way it looks in all the variations, then I should get it based on that color.
Yeah.
And
how they measure length, that'd be
how
important.
They measure length. A lot of the websites say that, but that's also a real key point on if it's single or double drawn. And density. When you see a higher density and it's measured from the nape, it's probably single drawn. And there's nothing wrong with single drawn. It just may not be for everybody. They are harder to style and so on and so forth. Okay, go on down. Thank you. So you want to definitely, and this is one thing we didn't talk about. I know we all talk about this, but how a cap fits is a huge issue. If your cap does not fit comfortably, you're not going to care how beautiful it looks. So you really have to make sure you're measuring your head accurately and ask them about their cap sizing. If you have any questions, make sure you look at their charts, because they all have different measured sizes. Yeah. And you have to make sure that their cap charts are going to fit your measurements, and because that is huge. It's huge how your cap fits.
Yeah.
So I think those are really the main thing. And if you see a brand saying hair is European without the word texture and they're charging $2,000 for a 24-inch wig, I wouldn't buy from them either, because they're not reputably advertising. And if you ever see a company say a wig is single drawn from one person, run, because that is completely false.
Yeah. Well, my brain is full. I don't know about everybody else's. We're also dropping people like flies. So I think we've all had enough. Tell us how people can find you. And I did put links in the description on the YouTube video. So her link to, if you want to do a consulting with Sarah, the link to sign up for that is there, but talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you can sign up for a free discovery call and chat with me via Facebook or Zoom or on the phone for 15 minutes to see if I might be able to help you. And my regular fees are on the website as well. I'm both a shopper and a coach, so I can help you find your wig, which it consists of helping you measure your head, getting your caps, finding the color you want, the length, in the price range, et cetera, et cetera. And then coaching's more about, how do I maintain my wig? Do I need some motivation or growth mindset for going out and wearing my wig, and that kind of stuff?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And thank you everybody who joined and who will watch this on the
really
replay.
Great. Yeah. I always love talking to you. You know, you're one of my idols. And yeah, I mean, I watched you when I was brand new. I've said this before. If it hadn't been for you out there back when I first started, it would have been even harder. So I thank you for all you do always.
Absolutely.
You're so amazing.
And I'm glad that you, you're filling a need truly. And it's hard to know who we can trust these days, to be honest. And especially in a world where influencers are like, everybody wants to be one. And sometimes motivations go awry. So thank you for being honest and for sharing your
I will always be honest. You guys can check out my reviews where I talk about marketing gimmicks and this didn't work. And
yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Happy Mother's Day to the moms out there. Bye.